Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Before we get started, let me share a quote with you. The great Les Brown once said, "You can't see the picture when you're in the frame." If you've felt stuck in your fitness, mindset, or life as a whole, head down to the link in the show notes and reach out to learn more about Project Endure Coaching so that we can help you step outside of the frame and bridge the gap between who you are now and who you want to be. We can't wait to hear from you. Now, let's get to the episode. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast. This is a bonus episode. We have myself, Joe Rinaldi, and also in Philadelphia, we have the first return guest of the podcast ever, Jess Leventry. Jess, what's going on?
I had no idea. I feel like I'm very honored right now. Thanks so much for having me, Joe. I am so excited, and that just really hypes me up.
Of course. Well, we are a few days post 100 miles completed, done and dusted. And before we jump into the details and we'll talk about the race, some lessons learned, everything leading up to it, how are you feeling?
I actually feel surprisingly really good. I feel so much better than I did roughly about a year ago after my first ultra, which was 50 miles. I am just blown away at how good I feel, all things considered. My right foot's definitely swollen and in a little bit of pain. But besides that, we caught up on sleep last night and I just feel so much back to my normal self, which is crazy 2 days after, I feel like this is nuts to be in this state,
Mm-hmm. So I'll share this first and then we'll rewind and we'll go pre-race, the
Yeah.
prep, we'll talk about that. But after the race, most of us, the crew, everyone running, none of us really slept.
Yeah.
And we got back to the Airbnb, we showered, and I just said goodbye. And I felt pretty good. So I drove home. The first hour was good. I felt really good.
Yeah.
And then it just hit me and I was so tired and it was scary. So I drank a Monster and I was good for another hour. And then it hit me again. The same wave of tiredness hit me again. So I drank a second Monster. And then I came home. I got home. I gave
Yeah.
Michaela a big hug. And then apparently we had a conversation that I don't remember. And I do remember eating dinner. She made like this chicken Greek kind of pita thing. And
Yeah.
I remember taking a bite of it with my head just hung over the table. And then I don't remember anything else until 4 a.m. the next morning when I woke up. And
Oh my
that was
God.
how I felt. And I only ran 20 miles. How did you feel after the race on Sunday?
No, I can't believe that. That is insane. um Afterwards, I was dead. I was dead. I remember I just got into the Airbnb. I showered. I felt so bad. I feel like I didn't say enough like thank yous and goodbye to everyone. But once I showered, you know how bad I wanted to shower. It was donezo for me. The minute I laid my head down on that bed, I was out. I think I slept for like 2.5 hours, and that kind of revived me for the 3.5 car ride later on that day. And then we passed out on the couch as well. Pretty hard later on. But yeah.
So Justin's not here to defend himself, but I just have to say, I think it was admirable how he gave up his car for the weekend. And I didn't know how much he cares about his car and
Yeah.
keeping it clean. And it was dirty. It was full of stuff. And we got back to the Airbnb, everybody showering, trying to take naps. And Justin hasn't slept in well over a day plus. And he's just out there cleaning his car, detailing his car. And I admire that so much. He's funny.
Dude, Justin loves his car, especially a clean car. I think he's a little OCD about it. And I was like, dude, just nap. Like we can deal with it later. And he's like, no, I'm cleaning my car and then I will shower. And I was like, okay, all right, fine.
Well, I will say you respect him a lot because when we put you in the car after the race, I said, Jess, it would help if you
Oh, yeah.
elevate your feet, put them on the dashboard. And you just looked at me and you said, Justin would kill me if I put my feet up there.
Yeah. I was really scared, honestly. I think he was like, okay, Jess, it's fine. We'll let this pass for once. But typically that's definitely not allowed.
All right. No feet on the dashboard
Yeah.
under normal circumstances. So let's do this, Jess. We we've talked on the podcast before, but for people who don't know who you are, I don't know, how would you introduce yourself?
Yes. Okay. My name is Jess Leventry, and I am now an ultra runner, I would say, an avid runner. I love all things fitness. I am a fitness coach in Philadelphia. I am a Project Indoor athlete. I am a BPN athlete. I also work a 9 to 5 in finance. Um, and I think that covers everything. But I love to keep myself busy. I do believe I feel my best when I am moving and challenging myself. And I do feel so fulfilled when I'm coaching and helping others feel themselves and their best.
Mm. So I looked back before we got on this podcast to just see, when was the first time we interacted? And the first time we interacted was the fall of 2020. Our mutual friend and past client of mine, Mike Zacco, connected us.
Yeah.
And ever since then, we've been working together, and I've learned so much about you.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about all these different things, I think, as we talk about the race. But one of the things that I know about you is that you like to push limits. And so you've run 2 50-mile races, and you just now consider yourself an ultra runner after the 100-miler. So the 50-milers weren't enough. The 100-miler, you check that box. Now, let's tell people what this race was, the name of the race, and also how did you find it?
Yes. So it was the Viaduct Trail 100. It was in upstate PA, so kind of on the border of PA and New York. And I honestly just found it on Ultra Sign Up randomly. In the beginning of the year, I was really looking for, as you know, I was teetering on signing up for 100. I wasn't sure, kind of thought it was impossible, but it was a scare that I kind of wanted to test. And I chose this one strictly because logistically it seemed the most easy for me. And also, I wouldn't have to train a crazy amount of elevation or altitude and worry about all those things. So, long story short, this one seemed at least the most approachable for a first pass at 100 miles.
Well, I will say this. I have never seen a race quite like that. I think two race directors. I don't know. There were 20 people who ran the 100. Um, no cell service, self-supported. It was out there, and it was cool. I have some comments and some notes and thoughts on just the atmosphere and everything, and we'll get to that. But for now, so you pick the race. Let's give people a snapshot of training, any of the highs, the lows that you experienced that we worked through together, because it wasn't always smooth and it wasn't always pretty. So I'd love to hear your take on the training for the 100.
So training was definitely a lot. I actually looked back on our training Excel file and I noticed we hit well over 1,000 miles in this prep, which I remember last year at the end of the year, I tracked roughly 1,400 miles for the year in totality. And for this stretch of roughly 5, 6 months was 1,000 miles plus. I know I didn't track everything that I ran, but for me, looking at those numbers is really helpful because I think it puts it into perspective like, damn, Jess, you did all that, and I think the training itself was hard. It was hard, but to a certain degree, I kind of found a really good rhythm that I did love. I've never done so many miles in a week before consistently, but I started to actually feel like, you know what, Jess, this doesn't feel half bad. And for me, that's a big step. And I remember training for the 50-miler, consecutive days of like 8 miles seemed like a lot, 3 days in a row, 8-mile runs. This time around, it was like 10, and just to see that little incremental change for me was just a huge amount of progress. And I feel like every time we roll around into these preps, it's just crazy to hit the amount of mileage that I do every week. And I think that's what I love about all of this is just like you show up every single day. And you may not be a 10 out of 10 every single day, but I do feel like I gave my best effort into this prep and I gave every day my absolute all. And I'm so happy about that. And that's where you look back and you see how much freaking work it takes, how much time it takes to do this, And I think that's another thing that was hard for the prep was just the sheer amount of time that this took. I mean, the last 5, 6 months of my life has just been running, on the weekends, trying to stay disciplined, saying no to a lot of plans, a lot of people, because you're running, obviously, all morning. You're exhausted. You need to refuel, recover, run the next day, you know? So that was definitely hard, but not too hard because I love it, and I wouldn't want to be doing anything else, to be honest with you. But I think the one thing that was a little bump in the road was, oh God, when was it? Early May, mid-May. I definitely started to feel very sick and nauseous during my runs. And that kind of fell into headaches, fatigue, and I was like, what is going on? So that's when I got some blood work done, a few rounds, and we ended up finding out that I had elevated CPK levels. So that kind of just put a little wrench in training. But it was a good reminder that I really do need to take care of my body. And I realized the amount of energy and output I was giving to running. I really need to make sure that I was fueling properly. And that was a really good kick in the ass to say, Jess, like, you got to be better at this. You know what I mean? Like, this is serious. And I think I took it a little bit lightly of just how much training I was doing.
So, all right, a couple things.
Yeah.
One, I have three kinds of clients. I have people who I ask them to do things and they do some of it. I have another type of client where I ask them to do things and they do it. And then I have Jess where I say run 6 miles and she runs 12, or I say do this and she goes above and beyond. And that's who you are. And
Yeah.
I've learned on my end maybe to navigate that in different ways. Some you know about, some you don't know about.
Yeah.
Maybe I underprescribe you mileage on certain weeks and you run more because I know you will. But when that came up, right,
Yeah.
that was I saw and felt how much of a shock that was to you. It was a shock to your system because you did not want to slow down.
Yeah.
And you were worried about, well, if I'm not running all these miles, if I'm not doing all these things, then will I be ready? And in hindsight, right, there were a few weeks where we were doing a lot of biking and we were turning down the volume for running and we were paying more attention to recovery.
Yeah.
And I sensed that you were worried about that. In hindsight, knowing how things played out, was there as much to be worried about, or was that just you not knowing what to expect?
Yeah. To be honest with you, I think I was so attached to the number of miles that I was hitting every week. And to be honest, like in hindsight, looking back on it now, that was the best decision for me to cross train, to get rid of all of the road miles and actually give my joints, my body some time to recover and push it in a different way. And I actually do appreciate that a lot more now. And I do think, oh, my next ultra, I will decide to do more cross training because I do think I felt so much more better with my body and mentally. I think I got over the hump like Jess. The number of miles in grand scheme of things does not matter. It's more important for your health and taking care of your body so you can show up on race day and actually perform. So I think thankfully at this point, I think I got over that mental hurdle, but that was really hard for me at first. I know you know that, but I'm super grateful that that was something to slow me down and just like kind of check in with myself and be like, okay, let's rethink this a little bit.
Yeah. And for everyone who's listening and everyone out there who's training for something, who gets caught up even in the slightest way in comparing themselves to other people or other training programs or the mileage or whatnot, I think there's so many different ways to do the same thing. You can get to the same place in so with so many different paths, right? There's no one right way. And looking back, knowing what you know now about the 100 miler, what do you know about training to be true, to not be true? Is there anything you see now about training for this? For example, like X is more important than Y, or speed might not be as important as volume, or that, right? What are some of the
Yeah.
things looking back that you learned?
I think it's just so important to have time on your feet, of course. Speed is not that important. I still did it for fun because I did love it once a week, but grand scheme of things, I think it's more about really building your legs. And what I really want to focus in on a lot is just like strength training my legs, while also being able to perform on the bike with resistance, on the incline, walking, on the Stairmaster, out on the road. Like, I think there's multiple different ways to do it, but I do think, looking at a lot more cardio in zone 2 and doing those things over a long period of time is super important because you're out there for a long, long time. And I think that's something that you don't realize until you actually go through it and you're like, no, my legs need to be strong enough to do this for 28 hours, on my legs that entire time. So that takes a lot of strength and intentionality in what you're really doing while you're training.
Yeah, I agreed. And so, two phrases I want to throw out there, and then we'll talk about, the day before the race. One, move the dirt, right? You alluded to this, right? You don't feel 100% every single day, but you get up and you move the dirt, you do the work. And some days you have a shovel, some days you have a spoon, and you moved the dirt and that paid off. So I wanted to acknowledge that. And then, two, one of my favorite sayings that I don't say enough. So I'll start. The legs feed the wolf.
Yeah.
Um, just because a wolf is a wolf doesn't mean it gets to eat. It has to hunt, it has to use its legs. And just because you're Jess, you're in shape, you probably could run long distances even without training as much. You still did the work. You had strong legs. You built that up. And that got you to the finish line.
100%.
So, with that being said, let's talk about the Airbnb. So the Airbnb was unique. I got there second behind Taylor. And when I got there, she wasn't there. So I'm in this house. It's giving me, serial killer slash. No, it was not that bad, but it was out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
It was actually really charming. And there's this tree in the backyard. I still don't know what kind of tree it was. I got to find out, but it was beautiful. And we all got there, and I figured this would be a good chance to talk about who was with us this weekend. So, in terms of people running, we had you, Lindsay, and Taylor. And then in terms of support, we had me, Justin, Jordan, Greg, and Troy. And I'm sure we'll talk about each one of them as this conversation unfolds, but we all get to the house, and I don't know, what was your experience the night before the race? What was in your mind? What do you remember?
I was honestly, Joe, so happy. I was so happy. Um, to give some background, we all got groceries, Justin, Jordan, and myself, and we were all cooking together. Mind you, the house didn't have great air conditioning, but that's okay. But I was so happy and so content. And my favorite part was sitting on the back porch. The yard in the backyard was massive. And like Joe said, there was this beautiful tree. There's a little pond. You're up in the mountains. It's just beautiful. The air just feels so good. And for me, I don't know what it is. There's this thing with just sharing dinner with people, and really being present, no distractions, really enjoying your company. And I looked around at that table and I was like, oh, I'm so happy. I don't know why I'm crying, but I was just so happy to look around and see like all these amazing people, that I could spend the most important weekend of my life together with. Um, So I was so happy that it turned out to be exactly the way I kind of pictured it to be. And yeah, it was awesome. There was a lot of laughs, different personalities. We talked a lot about our race strategy, but that's definitely a memory I will never forget. I think the night before races can be very stressful and anxiety driven, and just being outside, just having fresh air and just sitting around, people who you really, really look up to, you love, you respect, and just being there for an important moment. I was so happy. I was so grateful. So that for me was probably one of the best like pre-race nights I've ever had in my life.
It was special for all the reasons you said. I feel the same way. And just knowing that, we had a team, right? It was like our little crew, and we were going to spend that weekend together no matter what happened. And at that point we had no idea how it would go, but we were there.
Mhm.
And so, all right, we go to bed. I don't know about you, but it took us, our little group in the basement, a little while to fall asleep. Were you out right away, or was it hard to go to sleep?
No, I was not. I think I was so nervous. I was kind of like, that's when it really kicked in. I think when I put my head down, I was like, oh my God, Jess, like you're going to get up in 5 hours and we're going to do this thing. I also, like you said, I don't know why I was getting some crazy thoughts like, oh my God, someone's going to come in the house, or like we were in the middle of nowhere and there were some weird mountain homes close by. And I definitely got in my head a little bit. Um, so yeah, I didn't have the best night's sleep. But I know I slept for, I want to say maybe like 4.5 hours roughly. But
Mhm.
we had a 3 a.m. wake up call, so it wasn't a ton of time.
So we're up at 3 a.m. Everyone's moving around the house, getting ready, eating food in the kitchen. We get in the cars and we drive about 20 minutes to the start line. So we get to the start, we get out of the cars, and I don't know, what were you thinking at that point? What were you feeling at that point? Still dark, by the
Yeah.
way.
I was feeling really excited on the car ride there. I was playing my like favorite music just to get in my zone, And I honestly, I don't know, there was just this like sense of like peace. Like at that moment, I don't think I was really nervous anymore or stressed out. We got there on time. I think I was just like, all right, I'm ready. I'm ready to kick this thing off. And it was a really, really good feeling, especially knowing who I am, where I get extremely stressed out and nervous. I felt great, you know?
I'll say that in general, the handful of trail races or ultras that I've witnessed and been at for the start are so different than marathons, right? Marathons, everyone's packed in, everybody's anxious, nervous, there's a lot of energy. There are people getting out of tents 10 minutes before the race starts, right? There's like a guy with a beard down to his belly button just walking around with 2 bottles of Coke. Like the race director saying, all right, it's pretty simple. You just go in a straight line, don't make this wrong turn, and then come back. And it's so chill. And so that was cool. And 5 o'clock comes around and you guys are off. And so we'll bounce back and forth a bit because my perspective is the crew and the pacers. Your perspective is you're running this thing. Um, we get in our cars and we have no idea where we're going, but we drive to mile 6, which is the halfway point about of the 12.5 mile trail. So you're going out and back 4 times to complete this race. We're at mile 6. So we have no cell service. We pull off on the side road and we get to this place. There's no other cars, there's no other people. And we're like, we think this is it. So the group of us set up the big tent. We pull out the grill, we get the food set up, and we're just kind of there waiting. And I think one of the themes of this race was teamwork. And we had no idea. We couldn't track you guys, we couldn't contact you guys. We were just banking on the fact that we were in the right place and you were going to run by us at some point. And you did.
Yeah.
So take us through the first 6 mile segment, if there was anything that was memorable or if it was just business as usual running
Yeah.
6 miles.
And one quick detail I want to back up and and say really quick is that this race had no aid stations. So it was very much so self-supported. I was heavily reliant on you guys, which I appreciate. So that mile 6 became like home base, and I loved it. We had everything set up and it was perfect. Um, but outside of that, so the first 6 miles actually was super memorable, because I ran into someone who is connected with someone else that I work with at Lincoln. And little story really quick, she came over to my desk during prep and she was like, "Oh my God, Jess, like someone I met at the Y is an ultra runner. He's run X amount, like you would love him." And I quickly stalked him on Instagram and I was like, "Oh my God, this guy is like crazy. He's done Badwater, Leadville, all that stuff." And so I show up on race morning and I look at this guy and I'm like, "Why does this guy look so familiar?" And I go up to him and I'm like, "Hey, do you know so and so?" And we kind of started talking and it was him. And I was like blown away. And I was like, "You know what? Not to be weird, but I just stalked you on Instagram and you are such a savage." And so we spent the first 6 miles getting to know each other. And he is 69 years old. This was his 118th ultra marathon at the distance of 100 or plus miles. This guy is a beast, like a savage. And we just talked the entire 6 miles just about each other. I really got to know him. He has a very amazing personality, and you guys know because you've got to know him throughout the race too. But he kept telling me why he loves to run is because of the community and getting to know people. And actually, he doesn't love to run. He loves everything else about the run, right? I know. And I was like, "That's a little crazy." But he's just like, "I love this community and I love getting to know people like this." And I was like, "Wow, that's really awesome." And I just really appreciated the conversation because, again, like those first 6 miles could have been stressful. They could have been, "Okay, Jess, here we go." It could have been a whole nother mindset. But instead, I learned so much about such an inspiring individual, and we had such great conversations just about the ultra world. And I feel like I learned so much about him, and I really noticed how interested I was. And it was really cool. And then the rest of the race, we passed each other so many times. And, every single time he's like, "Hey, Jess." And I was like, "Hey, Keith, how we doing?" And it was just like that type of like intimacy in that race was really special because you could tell he was looking out for me and I checked in with him and it was awesome. So the first 6 miles to me was a really great start and a really good headspace to be in, especially, starting out something that's, pretty crazy.
So I'll second that. Every time Keith passed us, it was so positive. He made us laugh. I mean, this guy, even toward the tail end of the race, has got, 70, 80, 90 miles under his belt. He's exhausted and he's still cracking jokes. And there was a lot of teamwork. Like you said, he was looking out for everyone and he'd give us updates. I passed the girls, X amount of miles back, or they should be coming soon, or they looked good, or they might need this. And our mile 6 tent became this kind of hub for a select few people who weren't you guys to check in with us about you, about how the race was going. We made friends and it was such a cool atmosphere. And I'm so grateful that we were part of it. Um, so let's chunk the first 40 miles together. And you tell me if anything stands out within the first 40, but essentially for the first 40 miles, you're just running, no pacers, you're going, you're seeing us every now and then. We're getting you water, food, etc. But you're by yourself. You're with Taylor and Lindsay at points. But anything stand out about those first 40?
I think the first 40, I felt so good. We kept saying to each other, we were all like, "This is so beautiful here." Like we just felt so peaceful. I don't think we mentioned this, but there weren't a lot of runners for this race. So you did say it. So there was only a few, like under 20. And for us, it just felt like we were on this long training run together in the woods. And for me, like that's my happy place. And I just felt so happy and so grateful. We felt the sunrise come up. And between miles 6 and 10, there was this beautiful stretch where you could see the mountains like open up and you could see all the farmlands and everything. And it was just beautiful. It was just moments like that that really stuck out to me of like, oh, I'm so happy to be here and I feel really, really good. And I didn't honestly think about what mile I was at all. I didn't. And I was really happy about that. It just felt, this race felt so stress free, which is so crazy, but everything just was so calm and like, you guys were so put together. Like there was no concern about anything. And there was no stressful, negative conversations between Taylor, myself, or Lindsay at all. Like everything was so positive. We were all just so grateful to be there. And I think that was something that really carried us on for a long time until things got, hard. Um, but it was so cool. And we were learning about the trail. Obviously, we were really kind of analyzing everything. I had two favorite parts of the trail. It was one where the mountains opened up and I could see the farmlands. And then there was this awesome like little switchback with some hills in it. And I loved it. It was so fun. It broke up the trail. So the first 40, I felt really good and really like positive the whole time. And I'm just blown away at how good it felt.
I'm blown away by that and just how smooth, all things considered, and we'll get to the hard, darker parts, but all things considered, it was a really great race, all around. And, to your point of us having things together, yes, when you saw us, we had things together. And no, we never had any problems, no negativity at all. But I mean, you should have seen us, Jess. We were bored. There was no cell service. So we literally were throwing rocks into the woods left-handed, seeing who could hit the most trees with their non-dominant hand. And if anybody was around to see us, they would have had a good laugh because we looked like idiots. So we had some fun. And so we fast forward to mile 40. At that point, I'm trying to remember, but you were doing a good job with nutrition, hydration. We were on top of you. First 40 miles, you were, well, what were you eating a lot of that you remember for the first 40?
I was eating a lot of Bobo bites, which are freaking awesome. They're the stuffed ones and they were raspberry and apple pie. They were great. What else was I eating? I think I had some peanut butter pretzels. Oh my gosh, I'm like blanking. A lot of things were like oat base I was eating. I know that for a fact.
Couple gels,
Yeah,
maybe here and there.
yeah. But relatively speaking, I kept things pretty simple until I think it got a little bit later on in the race, and that's when I started eating like a little bit more like whole foods, I would say.
Mhm. I'll be honest, from my perspective, I was a bit worried because the only thing that I thought would stop you was lack of nutrition. And I knew that at some point you weren't going to want anything.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that at some point, but you actually did a good job with it. And I was impressed with that. So
Yeah.
nice work.
I know. I was really happy with myself too, to be honest. I know it wasn't a lot at times, but I knew how important it was, and I was like, just freaking eat it. So yeah, I was really happy with at least the start, nutrition wise.
Yeah. And so we kept things mostly water, electrolytes, carbs. We didn't do any caffeine for the first 40 miles on purpose. And I don't think you had any Advil in your system up until mile 40, if I'm thinking right.
I think it was mile 50, maybe I took my first Advil.
Okay. So what we'll do for the remainder of the race breakdown is we'll break it into the three pacers you had. So I didn't realize this until right now, but it was the four J's. It was Jess,
Yeah,
Jordan, Joe, and Justin.
I love it.
So you picked up Jordan as a pacer from mile 40 through mile 60, I believe.
Yeah.
Correct?
I think it was a little bit later in the 40s.
Maybe 45.
Yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah, because he did the first 6 mile stretch with me.
Okay. So with that being said, tell us a little bit about your time with Jordan. Did anything stand out? What was that experience like for you? And this is a chance for you to just in verbal form, just document almost as a journal what this race was like for you.
Yeah. So running with Jordan was awesome. And to give some background on Jordan, I met him not even a year ago in our Zion retreat. And he just is such a great, genuine person. We connected multiple times during my ultra prep because he's done 100 miles himself. And that's why I chose him, was really because number one, who he is, but two, he's been there before. And I really wanted people who understood it to be out there with me. And for him, running with him was great. I mean, he has such a positive attitude. He's got a great personality. We weren't bored ever out there, which I appreciated. But when things got harder for me, I actually hit a wall at mile 50 when I saw you guys again. And I don't know what really happened to me. I don't know if I was tired, but I just felt this sensation of like crying. And I don't know why. I know whoever knows me knows I'm very emotional and I cry a lot. So I'm not super surprised. But I don't know what it was. I remember coming back to Justin and I was like, I think I'm like hitting a wall right now. And, I just took a second and he's like, hey, it's okay. Like, you've been here before. The next steps are going to be a PR. Anything after 50, like you haven't been here before and it's okay. And we're going to get through it. And Jordan knew that. And so the next leg was just him and I because Taylor ended up going ahead. And so that next leg was one of my better legs, to be honest with you, because he used a strategy with me that he used during his ultra where we did 3 minutes jog, 2 minute walk and power walk, that is. And for me, I didn't even look down at my watch at all during that time. I just listened to his voice and I listened to his watch alarm go off. And we just fell into this rhythm of just, keeping moving. And it felt so good. And I kind of just let my mind relax. And we actually had really good, deep conversations that had nothing to do with running, but more so just about who we were and, our lives and things that we struggled with. And it's this conversations out there on the trails, and this because we had the same experience, but you just don't forget those, and it's just awesome that, yeah, we were in the middle of this pain cave and this race, but I also felt really, really connected in the conversations I had with you guys. And it's those moments when you're running and you talk to people like that you just get so lost and you lose track of time. And for me, it was just like, wow, I really needed that. And I needed to get out of my head about this race and just fall into, leaning on someone else. And I think that's why we choose pacers, is because at some certain points, you need to lean on people. And I really appreciated that segment with Jordan just to, mix things up from, like a running strategy and kind of just get lost in deep conversations.
Yeah. And Jordan is a conversationalist. He can
Yeah.
talk and he is funny and
Yeah.
he's what he'll be what you need. And he made us laugh so many times through the
Yeah.
weekend. Um, he I think he ended up running 42 total miles
Yeah,
because
he did.
after after he stopped pacing you up to mile I guess it would have been mile 60.
Yeah.
Um then he started pacing Taylor for a while and he was just all over the place, but he did a great job.
He was
Uh,
running.
he was running. So mile 60, that was my first time seeing the 10-mile mark in the race because that's where mile 60 took place. And it's me, Justin, and Amanda Odgers who drove up and was so supportive, and she did what needed to be done, and she was an integral part of the crew. And so we're in the car and we pull up to the spot, and the only signage of the entire race is at mile 10. And it's a big piece of cardboard propped up against the traffic cone that just says like take the bridge or the
Yeah.
bridge is this way with spray paint. Um, and so we're waiting for you, we're waiting for you, we're waiting for you, and you get there.
Yeah.
We give you some water, we get you some food, and then from mile 60 to mile 75, it's you and me.
Mhm.
And so mile 60, we started about 7:30 at night. So sun was low in the sky, starting to set, and we went up that switchback that you had mentioned. And then we get to that last like 2 mile stretch, which from my recollection, and you ran this 4 times down and back, but from my memory, was just like a lot of like taller trees that kind of like, you know, hung over the trail. So it was kind of dark. Um, that was cool for me because it was my first, like, okay, now I'm moving and I'm excited. And we started off with that strategy of 3-minute jog, 2-minute power walk. And I have some memories that I want to talk about, but did anything stand out to you in the beginning of our time together or even just overall?
I think immediately I just kind of felt like super peaceful. And I hope you know this, but you just bring me so much peace, Joe. And you're just someone that just like kind of overwhelms you with like comfort without you even trying. And I was really looking forward to running with you. Sorry again. That's what happens when I talk about it 2 days after. But again, it was just like I picked these people because I knew what they do to me. And I just felt like, okay, Jess, here we go. Like everything's fine. Joe's got you. Like I knew you had me. And then we were gonna get through the next, 16 miles or so together. And it was just this peace again that I felt. And I was like, okay, I can do it. And the way obviously we had so many, again, so many growth conversations and thinking forward into our lives, which I appreciated. A lot of important things in our lives we talked about. And again, it was just, I got so lost in the conversations we have together that I almost forgot about the way I was feeling, the pain, whatever was going on. And it was just awesome. And I really appreciated it. And for those that are also listening, Joe was adamant that every time I walked, I was eating a cracker every single time. And at this moment, I think it is helpful for people to know that I wasn't eating as much as I was prior. My stomach was really getting a little frustrated with me. So it was a little hard to eat, but we were calling Joe dad at this point because he was very on us, which I appreciate because I'm the most stubborn person. And if you weren't like that with me, I wouldn't have done it. So I do appreciate it.
Of course. Well, I'm glad you listened. And here's another point, right? Just the teamwork that was happening as all this was going on. Every time there was a checkpoint, whoever was with you or any of the runners, we'd give a quick update. She's struggling to drink her water, or, she's doing a good job with food, or she's struggling with food, or she said this, or this worked well. And it was just such a team effort. And I can't get over that. But yeah, we ran, we turned on our headlights when it got dark, and it was creepy,
It was
in the
scary
woods
out
a bit.
there. Yeah.
I was ready to fend off a bear for you, Jess. I really
Yeah.
was. Uh the night before, so just to rewind, at the Airbnb, when Lindsay and Greg got there, Lindsay walks in the kitchen and the first thing she says is, "Oh my goodness." And she's pointing out the window. And I think I might have been the only person in the kitchen. And I look outside and there's a black bear in the backyard and it just darts into the woods. And so
I love that.
I was on guard, but we were okay. Um, I guess a couple things. So one, I also appreciated our conversations, and there was just something about being tired, it being the middle of the night, out in the middle of the woods by ourselves, just being able to kind of dream and envision and talk about meaningful things that was really special to me. And so I appreciated that too. Um, we were a bit delusional at times.
Yep.
I have a video on my phone. I was like, let me get a video of Jess running in the dark with her headlight. And I'm backpedaling on a rocky, trail. And in the video twice, you're so concerned. You're like, Joe, you're worrying me. Please
Yeah.
stop.
I was
And
like, here goes Joe. He's gonna fall on his back. I don't even know what's gonna happen. It was so dark. It was so dark. So yeah,
yeah,
that scared the living
yeah.
hell out of me.
So I stopped that. But there are a couple things. So one, to rewind to 2023, you're running the New York City Marathon. You're near the tail end and you're running toward where I'm standing. And I'm about to take a video of you. But because of the way you're approaching me, I realized that you're coming to me because you want to interact. And so I just, for whatever reason, turned my camera toward us and capture this moment where you're hurting, your legs hurt a lot and it's hard. And I just say, you can do anything for 3 miles. And there was one point where we were at mile 70. And I don't know if you remember, but I made a comment, you can do anything for 30 miles. So
Yeah.
we just 10x that. There was another moment where you were a little out of it and you were just sad. There were tears. And one of the things I want to acknowledge about you is you're so emotional, and that's a superpower. And it can also get in the way at times. And so there was this push and pull of emotion that was helping you and holding you back. And said, why are you sad? And you said, because I have so much longer to go. And I said, well, what are you sad about? And I pulled out my phone after you said it. I wanted to get it on film. And you just said 4 words, basically. And you said, shower, sweatpants, sweatshirt, clean hair. That's,
Yeah.
that's, that's all you said. I have the video, and I'll keep it between us because it's funny. But and I said, great, only 26 more miles. Um, and we did it. We did it. And I told you how proud I am of you, and how much I admire you, and how much of a light you are in the world for the people that get the privilege of interacting with you. And I told you that I only give compliments that I mean. And I mean all of those things. And I'm so, so, so proud of you, Jess. And those miles were so special to me because I had the privilege of getting to share those with you. And I'll never, ever forget
Joe.
that. You're welcome.
There's another memory that I just remembered too that stuck out to me, and you put the quote in your caption. But and I was really struggling, and I remember I said something probably along the lines of, we have a lot more to go. I'm really hurting, Joe. And you told me, and I'm gonna mess up the quote, so you might want to say it, but you told me that quote, and I love it so much. And I was like, no, you're right. Like, you are so right. And I knew this pain was going to come, and I wanted it. I wanted to feel this way. And I'm here now. And I know there's going to be a light at the end of this. And I'm going to be so thankful that I went through this. And I love that quote. You're gonna have to say it if you had it with you, but it's just so important for everyone to hear, because if anyone's struggling through something, there's always potential and a light on the other side.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't have been a pacing with me if I didn't share at least one
You're
quote.
right.
And
You're right.
I do have the quote pulled up, but I'm gonna paraphrase the way I paraphrased it to you on the trail. And it was just like, when things get hard, first of all, you signed up for this because it was hard. And so this is what you wanted. But when things get hard, you look up in the distance and you see a wall. And when most people see that wall, they think, I can't get past that. I can't get through that. I'm going to turn around. But if you have the courage to walk up to the wall, you realize that it's not a wall, it's a curtain. And then you get the privilege of pulling back that curtain and stepping through to the other side. And on the other side is a deeper, better, more resilient version of you with more self respect, more self love, more self understanding. And that was what this race was, over and over and over again. And every time you thought you couldn't go more, every time you thought there's no way I can push through, you did, and you unlocked a new version of yourself. And that's what's so special about these races. I'm glad that stood out to you, because that was special for me.
Yeah, and I don't want to like derail us at all, but I do think this is important, that what you just said just hit the nail on the head as to why I signed up for this. This wasn't a race at all to me. It was a commitment to myself and learning more about what I have to give and who I am. And that's exactly what you just said. On the other side of all this pain and endurance, which is, temporary, there's this other person on the other side of all of this that you start to see and you start to understand. And the more you learn about that other person, I think there's this whole other level of respect you have for yourself and confidence that you start to see. And that's why I signed up for this. There wasn't oh, I want to be first place and run my fastest race doing 100 miles. Like, no, I wanted to feel the pain and the struggle and understand that I am capable of doing these hard things.
And on top of that, we talked about this out on the trails, but you doing this is going to inspire other people to do these things. And by these things, I don't mean 100-mile races. And I would guess, Jess, there are going to be people who run their first 100-mile race because you ran this one. And that's so, so cool. But just to do that thing that they've been putting off or they've been afraid of, that conversation, that application, that endeavor or adventure, people are going to do things because you did this, just like you did this because other people before you have done other things like this. You know,
It's powerful. The
it
domino
is.
effect.
So, two other things I want to mention, and then we'll transition to your final leg. So, one other thing is that we switched up the strategy a couple different times. We went with the 3 minutes on, 2 minutes power walk. We did, I think, 2 minutes and 2 minutes at one point. We went to just walking. And then when you wanted to run, we would run as long as it could take us. And there were varying stretches, right? And we would go with the ebbs and flows and we would ride the highs and we would endure the lows. And, all that to say is, you can have a plan, but in the moment, sometimes you just have to keep moving and find a way. And we did this all in silence and conversation, except for about an 40-minute stretch where we played a Big Booty Mix on my iPhone that was downloaded. So that was good. And then the other thing that stood out to me was there's a bridge right before you get back to the start that you have to cross. And while we were taking note of the stars and making comments about how beautiful the sky was the whole time, it was almost 1 a.m. and we're jogging across this bridge. And I look up at the sky and I'll never forget that picture in my mind. Out of the corner of my eye, I see your light. You're right next to me. I see your headlamp. And I'm looking at these stars, and it feels like I could just reach up and grab one. It felt like the sky was so close to us. And you don't get that when you're, here in Philadelphia. You don't get that in a lot of places. And I'll never forget that. And then we keep running. I give you a big hug and I tell you how proud I am of you. And we jog into Justin with his Jeep in the parking lot. And, at that point, there are a couple things that I think would be cool to mention. One of them is that you had a rash on your legs that you were concerned about. Your hips were tight. So we put some Neosporin on the rash. I stretched your hips. We got you all situated. I think we might have looked at your feet. And then Justin had a surprise for you. And this is where I would love to just hear, your take on things.
Yeah. So I got into the car. I think I was charging my Garmin. And Justin handed me some phone and some woman's talking. And I'm a little delirious, that at this point. I'm tired. And it's my mom on FaceTime at 1:15 in the morning. And that was such a special moment for me. Just to give some background, I definitely struggled with not feeling a ton of support from my family with my physical endeavors. But this was the first time that my mom was really active in the first couple of days leading up to this race and during. I know she was texting Justin and just being in so much pain, hearing her talk to me the way she did. It was just honestly one of the best surprises during the race. And I never expected her to be on her phone at 1:15 in the morning to call me. But it was amazing, and I'm so grateful that Justin made that happen, because in that moment, I didn't know I needed that, but it definitely helped me mentally just reset and, listen to obviously someone you love and you care about. It was such a huge moment. I think I was waiting for that for the last couple of years, to be honest, for a phone call like that. And it just really meant the absolute world to me.
It was so special. And earlier in our time together out on the trails, we talked about your family and we talked about your mom. And I didn't know that was going to happen, by the way. But you're sitting in the car and Justin just elbows me with the biggest smile on his face. And he goes, "Watch this." um, and so watching that unfold was so special. And now you're ready to get back out on the trails. It's mile 75. So you've got 25 more. It's an out and back. And I should preface this by saying it was hilarious how concerned you were about Justin in the sweetest way. You were like, he hasn't slept at all. I hope he's okay. Meanwhile, you've run 75 miles and you haven't slept at all, and you're worried about Justin. And so I'll let you take it from here, because it was just you guys, and I don't know what that was like.
Yeah. So I mean, this was definitely special. I feel like we spend so much time together, and honestly, during the race, I missed him a lot. And I think it meant a lot to me because he knows me better than absolutely anyone else. And the minute I got back for that last stretch and met up with him, he was smiling and he's just so excited and so happy. And he's like, let's do this thing. And it just felt like we were on like another like run together somewhere. And seeing him so excited and so happy just made me so happy. It gave me so much energy back. And I'm not gonna lie, that 25-mile stretch was the hardest part that I did during the race. And I think it wasn't until mile 80 where it really, really, really hit home that I was in a lot of pain. But our conversations were slim, engaging back and forth. But for Justin, he's a coach at heart. And hearing him talk to me the way he did was so powerful. I don't even really know what he was saying that really dug deep for me, but he was there with me every single step. He never stopped talking to me. He never stopped encouraging me. He didn't ever stop supporting me and saying that I was strong, that I got this. And it just meant so much to me because I know, he is an unbelievable coach, but I don't see that side of him all the time. And seeing him obviously be the love of my life, but also coaching me through every single step and reminding me who I am and why I came here, and knowing that I was going to finish this. He believed in every single step of me. I was so happy. And I told you this while we were on our run, that seeing Justin here and just seeing how active he was and just how caring and thoughtful, and he didn't sleep a minute the whole weekend. He was just so there and so present the entire time. And that just meant so much to me. But I don't think I would have done nearly as well as I did if it wasn't for Justin being there for me. And he has some superpower on me. He flipped a switch somehow. And I remember after crying with every single step for the last 6 hours, we got to mile 95 and 96. And I started running in like an 8:30 down to a 7:55 minute pace. And he's just hyping me up the whole way. He's like, that's what I'm talking about, Jess. Like, let's go, let's go. And I don't know what it is, but he just set this fire in me. And he just kept reminding me, Jess, you're running 100 miles today. You're doing this. And you are so close. You have 5 miles left. And he's so powerful in what he does in our relationship. And this race was just a huge eye-opening experience for me to look at our relationship and just be so thankful that I have Justin as a partner who believes in everything I do and supports me and knows exactly what I need, when I need it, and how to talk to me. And it was amazing. And I'm so thankful that I got to experience one of the craziest moments of my life with him and finish it with him. So it was just such a special, special 28 hours with all of you guys. And I'm so thankful with how things ended, even though it hurt like hell. I kept looking at him and I was just like, I'm so thankful that this guy is next to me.
For the first 75 miles, Jess, it was like he was about to play the biggest football game of his life. And he had that energy. He was just waiting for it. He was waiting for it.
I could tell.
And so tell us what it felt like to run down that home stretch to the finish line and realize that you did it.
Honestly, it felt so surreal. It didn't even feel real. It doesn't even still feel real that I ran 100 miles. But I'll say, leading up to that, I was like, damn, I earned this. Like, it was the first time it really felt like I gave everything to this thing. Like I never saw myself in so much pain for so much amount of time, like physical pain for so long. And I was like, if I can do this, I'm gonna cross that damn finish line today. And I'm gonna be so freaking happy. And the last 6 months, I have envisioned crossing that finish line every single time I went on a run. I drove myself crazy, I think, thinking about it. But that moment was just the most freeing moment I've had maybe in my whole life, to be honest with you. Um, it just felt so good knowing that I went through so much shit in the last 28 hours, but here we are and we did it. And it's incredible.
I know that you're still processing and that you'll continue to process, I'm sure, for a long time. I want to hear any other thoughts, lessons, takeaways that you had from this entire experience. And I'll give you a second to think by saying that one of the things for me, watching you, Lindsay, and Taylor all complete this race was every time we saw you guys, there were different emotions, right? Sometimes it was all good and the food tasted great and smiles all around. And then we can see you 6 miles later and there were tears or, struggles or pain, whatever it was. And that continued to just change and ebb and flow. And every time it was in my head, oh my goodness, you know, Jess is struggling. And when we see her in another 4, 5, 6 miles, she's going to be struggling. And you would shock me because you'd be in great spirits. And then I would think, oh, she's going to be in great spirits. And then you would be hurting. And I think it's just this beautiful metaphor for life. And there are ups and there are downs, but you keep moving and none of it lasts forever. And there's always a sunrise after every sunset, right? You run through the night and you're guided just by the light of your headlamp that sometimes dies like yours did. And you get through it and the sun comes up and it doesn't last forever. And I think that's something that a lot of people understand, but need to be reminded of.
100%. I do think there's a few themes that I thought about the entire race, to be honest, even before it started. As this thought started the minute we sat down for dinner, and it went through the entire time, it's still going on. And that is truly surround yourself with people that want to see you win. And that is the first thought and the most important thought in this whole entire race because it's not an individual effort by any stretch of the imagination. It is a team effort. And you've said it multiple times, and I will reinforce it. I wouldn't have been where I am if it weren't for all of you guys. And I was just blown away and just so full of gratitude that I have people in my corner that sacrifice their entire weekend, sacrifice sleep, their energy, their time on their feet. They sacrificed so much. And all they wanted was to see me win. And I just think that is so amazing. And I hope that people have people like that in their lives to do these things because I do think that is the secret ingredient in all of these success stories and different achievements is having people in your corner that want to see you win and support you. And I think it's so true when you go out on that course because I've leaned on you guys in so many different ways and in ways that you all may not even know how much that you got me through mental emotions and all of that stuff. So I think that's number one that is just so important that I really want to stress to a lot of people. But the other one is just believing. And I actually heard this in a podcast with Sally McRae and Nick Bear, but it just stuck with me so hard, and it stuck with me in the entire race. And it's just the ability to believe, and believing in something will change your attitudes, your decisions, the way you think about anything. And Sally kept bringing up, you have to believe in something in order to accomplish it. And I just kept thinking, like, Jess, I believe in you. I believe in this dream. I believe in this ability to accomplish this race. I believe in it. And I know I can do this. And there was never a thought in my mind that I was going to quit at all. I knew I was moving slow at times, and if anything, it just meant I was going to be out there a little bit longer. But there was no way in hell that I was going to go home and get in the car. And I think we underestimate the power of believing. And I know Sally mentioned this. It's not a sexy word. It's not something that people really talk about, but it's the key driver that moves us and keeps us moving forward, is believing in our goal, our accomplishments, or whatever we're striving for, believing in our training, believing in everything that we have done up until that point that is leading us to where we want to be. And it was just awesome to feel that, because I know, I've struggled a lot with not believing in who I am and what I'm doing. And this was a full race, 28 hours, where I was like, Jess, I believe in you and you're going to do it. So those are my two little things that I've been really deeply thinking about.
Both beautiful. And to tie it all together, I don't think that you would have had the same crew and group of people around you if you didn't believe in yourself enough to choose something big and to do something hard and to push yourself outside of your limits. Because part of that is contagious. And I say that because if anybody out there is struggling to find that group of people to surround them and support them, one, they're out there. You have to find them. But two, when you step outside of yourself and you do something big and bold and hard, people will come to support you, because that's attractive, that's admirable, that's inspirational, and people want to support people who are doing hard things. And the only reason that we were there, Jess, was because you chose to put yourself in that position. And so I want to thank you, because I had an amazing time. The sleep, the sacrifices, the sleep deprivation, it was worth it.
Yeah.
And I had so much fun. I would do it again. And that's on record. So
Let's go. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that.
of course. So Jess, as we wrap this conversation up, is there anything else you'd like to share with people? Anything about where your head is at next, where training is going, what life looks like, or any other message that you'd like to share with people?
I think the one other message that I do keep thinking about too is that, whether you think something is scary or impossible, put your mind to it, sign up for it, raise your hand, ask your manager, ask whomever, put yourself in a position where you're scared shitless and you don't know what you don't know, but you take that first step. And for me, that was in December, signing up for this race, fully thinking this is going to be impossible, but still doing it anyway, because I was ready to put in the work every single day and do my very best. And I think that's so important, that when we do reach for these goals that do seem impossible, the key to all of that is showing up consistently every single day and doing the hard work. Whether you feel a 10 out of 10 or you feel a 2 out of 2, you still show up every single day. And that is so important. And that is the key to showing up to whatever that goal is and crushing it. And I think that is the best way we can continuously grow, is when we step out of our comfort zone and do something that seems relatively impossible, So that's number one. Number two, where my mind's at now, I know I have the Chicago Marathon coming up in the fall, and we have our 24-hour event in Philadelphia for charity, which is going to be awesome. But this is the first race where I feel like I am so not done yet, and I am so inspired by the effort this weekend. I want more really bad. And usually I remember after the 50 miler, I was kind of tired and I didn't feel like running anymore. But right now I can't wait to run again. I am so excited. I'm actually looking at some 50 milers. I haven't told you yet, Joe. There's a 50 miler in Antelope Canyon in next year that I think I kind of want to just dip my feet into more of like the Midwest running, even though obviously, again, and that's the thing for me, that seems like a very big challenge and extremely scary, because if you're training on the East Coast, the terrain is completely different and so is the weather. So for me, that's scary, but it's a huge challenge and I really kind of want to put myself out there. So that's on the docket potentially. So I know that's news to you.
Well, one thing is I was surprised I already didn't get a text
Yeah.
of, a race registration for
Yeah.
whatever, but that doesn't surprise me. And two, we forgot to mention this, but just for context, it was hot
Yeah.
during the day. It was a very, very hot day. And so just to add that layer of context to the race,
Yeah.
it was tough. So with all that being said, Jess, I want you to let people know where they can follow along with your training, your life, and everything that you're doing. But before you do that, I want you to know again, I am so proud of you as a coach, and so proud of you as a friend. And I'm so grateful that I get to call you that. And I cannot wait to see what you do next.
Thank you, Joe. I seriously appreciate it. You've shown up with me and for me for absolutely everything that you've coached me through, and you know how much that means to me. So I appreciate you so much. And for anyone following along, I'm only really active on Instagram, and that's Jess Leventry as my handle.
Awesome. Well, I'll link that below. Jess, thank you for this recap. Thank you for the hard things that you do. And now I think it's time for both of us to get some sleep.
Yep. Thanks so much, Joe. I appreciate it.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. And one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Indoor Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.